Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial technology entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, had 20 of those fail, but scaled 10 of those to success. And I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book. It's called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach people how to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every win. Now I'm the CEO of Sononify Technology. We're a nearshore software engineering firm, helping other firms either scale existing teams or launch new projects. And today I am joined by Michael Smith, who's a partner at Fordium Partners. Michael has been a consultant, a multi-time CIO. He's been a founder, now a partner at Fordium. Michael, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on.
You bet. If you would, Michael, spend a few minutes and tell our listeners the journey of your career and what led you to your current role.
Yeah. So I've been in the IT industry almost 30 years, and I went to college thinking that was the one degree I did not want to pursue, was in computer science, and so I ultimately had kind of found my way, finishing my college experience as getting a bachelor's degree in criminology with an emphasis in criminal profiling and a minor in communications.
Well, that's quite a pivot.
It was. So I started working at a number of different companies, and one of the companies I was at was a bank that I was kind of working in their fraud detection and automated clearinghouse, and kind of looking at suspicious activity that may be happening with large financial transactions. And that particular bank had an AS400 system with an OS2 operating system, and the administrator would drive in, usually about 2.5 hours in, from the headquarters office to then work on some issues with the computer system. And they would end up doing that 6 or 7 times a year. And so one of the times they were visiting, I told them, hey, I didn't have a clue what they were doing, but maybe they could just call and I could walk through whatever the activities they were doing, and it saves them 5 hours on the road. And they loved the idea. We did that a couple of times, and it was just really intriguing. And it wasn't what I was expecting IT to be. And I think the same reasons of what drew me into criminology, that whole analytical side, were some of the same skills that were driving me toward the IT industry. And so I actually ended up going back to school. Microsoft was up and coming at that time, and was able to achieve a number of certifications in that space, and started working in the IT industry. And I had an opportunity to work with both large and small companies, both publicly traded, Fortune 200 company, as well as nonprofit and associations. And during my time with that Fortune 200 company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, I had an opportunity to lead one of their 4 operating groups, and would have been considered like a segment CIO within that organization, reporting to the global CIO. And from there, was a CIO for a medical association company that was one of the largest associations for medical specialties in the country, and was with them for about 6.5 years. And then one of the individuals that I used to support back in Thermo Fisher, they were a VP of operations in one of the business units I oversaw. They had asked if I would come and be the CIO for a startup company in the life sciences side with that, and have been playing that role in that startup company for the last few years, and then came across Fordium Partners back in 2023. Fortium is the largest technology leadership as a service firm in the United States, and they provide technology executives to companies of all sizes and all industries that would be related to CIO, CTO, and CISO executives for those companies.
Gotcha. In your career, you've touched startups through public companies and everything in between. And so how did you get your role at Fordium Partners? No doubt you had this extensive experience, but did you know someone? Did you apply online?
Yeah.
What led to?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey, because several years before I joined Fortium, we had crossed paths, and I think it was just on LinkedIn and social media. And we had talked about me coming on as a partner. And at that particular time, it just wasn't the right time, because, again, I was with that medical association, was leading a very large end-to-end digital transformation, both on the operational side as well as the technology side. And just didn't feel right that I would leave that organization to do something different until we were finished with the job, right? And with the goals of what we were trying to set out to do. And so a few years had went by, and again, we just seemed to intersect on LinkedIn with one of their posts or something. And I think it was kind of a mutual reach out, that they were reaching out to me the same time I was kind of reaching out to them, and started having conversations. And I thought, yeah, this might be the right time. And so the requirements to be a partner with Fortium, you have to be in the IT industry at least 20 years. You had to have served as a CIO, a CTO, or a CISO in at least two, if not three companies or more. And the reason for that is that the model that Fortium provides is both fractional as well as interim executive leaders is, you know, you have to have played that role, right? Because you're providing value very quickly, hitting the ground running with Fortium clients. And so they're expecting that this is not the first time you've played that role as a technology executive with Fortium. You have a lot of history and a lot of
Kind
background.
of joke, Michael, you have to do it wrong enough, long enough to figure out how to do it right.
Absolutely.
I wish there was a better way to learn than to screw stuff up and see problems,
Uh,
but I'll
uh,
tell you what, you learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
that is absolutely correct.
Now at Fortium, I'm very familiar with the company, great company. Are you, and you live in the Kansas City area. Are you guys industry aligned as partners, geography aligned? How does that work?
So both. So I'm in what's considered the South Central region. So this would be kind of the South Central part of the United States, because Kansas City, even though we're a little bit further north than Dallas, where kind of that South Central region is kind of headquartered, it still kind of covers that Kansas City area. And so from that perspective, I report into a area operating manager there with Fortium, from that perspective, that oversees that South Central region. But
Gotcha.
from an industry perspective, my primary industry background is in life sciences, biotech, biopharma, healthcare space. But I've also worked on a number of different initiatives with Fortium and their clients in industries outside of that. So I was
Gotcha.
an interim CIO for about 7 months with a large workers' comp company based out of Austin, Texas. But predominantly, my background is more in the healthcare, life sciences area. So generally, I'll work in that particular industry, but depending upon what the needs are of the client, then I may be outside of that industry as well. Because there's
Gotcha.
certain things that, from a technology perspective, similar to accounting and finances, is that at a fundamental level, technology is the same across the industries. It's when you start getting into applications and how certain industries operate from a regulatory perspective, there's some differences. But when you think about the infrastructure of building out a network and looking at that infrastructure, it's very similar across different industries.
Well, having had almost 140 CIOs, CTOs, and CEOs on the podcast so far, it is crazy. Outside of pull the regulatory layer out, challenges are very similar.
Yep.
And that's why, people like listening to the show to see how others are attacking it. Now, I know you can't go into customer specifics, but tell us some current projects you're working on and some current challenges you're out there attacking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, I was working with a client, an insurance that I recently rolled off, and that was an intern full time CIO. And the way the model works with Fortium is, if for our enterprise customers, we're generally brought in when a technology executive has left the organization or has been asked to leave, and we'll come in and fill that gap, right, at an interim basis. And generally, most large companies realize that when an executive leaves, it could take 6 to 9 months, if not longer, to backfill that role. And not only backfill that role, but to get that role up to speed with them being able to start providing value to the company that they're working for. And so providing that value and filling that role, and then helping that company determine who the permanent executive will be. We're not a search firm, but we do work with a lot of recruiting firms, and we help vet out the candidates to see if that person would be a good fit for the permanent person. And then once we roll off, right? And so we may be brought into another company for that same purpose. For our small to mid-sized companies, it's probably more of a fractional role. So either the company has grown in size that They now recognize they need a technology leader, that their technology is getting out of hand. They really need to have a strategy and kind of a roadmap of how they want to continue to grow their organization. And so they'll bring in Fortium as that fractional leader. And then our fastest growing segment within our organization is with private equity firms. And so a lot of private equity firms have started reaching out to Fortium, where we've been brought in to manage their portfolio of companies from a technology perspective. Or maybe they're interested in acquiring a company and now they want to do some technology due diligence to really understand what are we inheriting when we acquire this company. Or once they have acquired that company, how do we integrate this company into our tech stack? And so they'll
Gotcha.
utilize us because of our flexible model. And so those are the types of
So
projects.
with the larger clients where you or other partners in your firm are acting as a temporary or interim CIO for a 6 to 12 month period, how much can you attack during that? Is it more about bringing order and making sure to understand everything's there, or do you, with that limited time frame, do you get to really push new initiatives? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think the advantage that Fortium plays from your traditional full-time employees is that we're brought in as an expert. And so at times, companies that we are working with are really looking for our expertise, right? So they're open to our ideas, our recommendations, where sometimes that may be a little bit more challenging for individuals that are already within that company, right? And so, or when a new hire comes in, there's a honeymoon period there, but that honeymoon period quickly kind of goes away, right? When you're from an environment like Fortium, they're paying a premium price to get that executive in. So they definitely want to make sure they're getting value quickly. And having the experience that we've been in those roles in the past, we know exactly what needs to happen when we hit the ground running. Number one, we need to understand an overall assessment of what is the technologies that you are currently using as an organization. What are the projects you currently have in flight? What is the resources that you currently employ, and are they the right resources? And then working with the executive leadership of the company, understanding what is your overall strategic plan. What are you trying to do as a company in the next 3 to 5 years? Because then we can easily map, is the technology you're currently investing in going to meet the needs of what you're trying to do as an organization? And couple with that, do you have the right resources within that IT function that are going to be doing that? And so you'd be surprised that there is significant progress that's made even in the first 3 months of us coming on board, because again, we've lived in these worlds multiple times from various different industries. And I was again with that firm for 7 months as an interim CIO. Not only was I able to help them stabilize some of the challenges that they were facing with the team that they had there from a stability perspective. Day three on that specific opportunity, the network went completely down.
No.
Something that had happened multiple times in the last several months. And so we knew there was a lot of instability that was happening within the environment. And so coming in and from an outside view, really challenge the team to kind of take a step back and let's look at this from a holistic point of view. Where is this happening and when is this happening? And so we were able to probably within about a 2 to 3 week period, even though they'd been challenged with this for the last 5 or 6 months, in a 2 to 3 week period, we were able to figure out the root cause and stabilize that. And I don't think it's anything magical that I did. I think the thing that was helpful is I came from a different perspective. I came in from the outside because sometimes when you're in an organization, you can kind of be tunnel vision to
No doubt.
looking at what the organization has
It could
historically.
be hard to pull yourself back and take a fresh
Exactly.
look at the
And
issue.
yeah, and so first of all, within that first month, we were able to stabilize the operations to where they weren't having as many outages. Also, I was the fourth CIO they had in that position in less than 5 years. So there had been a revolving door where one retired, another person came on board. He then took another opportunity. They promoted within for the third CIO. That didn't work out, so they ended up letting that person go, and then they brought me in. And one of the
Gotcha.
things the CEO wanted was someone that had never worked in the workers' comp space. So that's the reason why I was selected, because again, my background's more in life sciences and healthcare. And so she just wanted to be able to bring someone in from, again, a different perspective, kind of look at things from a different viewpoint. And
Gotcha.
so in that 7 months, not only did we stabilize operations, not only did we increase the morale of the IT team because there was a lot of anxiety with leaders constantly coming and going, but we also laid out for them a 3-year technology roadmap of what they need to really focus on to meet their overall goal, which was actually a 10-year plan that they were addressing that would help them by year 3 and 4 not only stabilize and reduce the overall cost, total cost of ownership of IT, but also to make sure they're investing in the right technology and the right partners to achieve what they were trying to achieve over that next decade. We accomplished a lot in a 7-month period and
All right.
onboarded a new chief transformation officer for them as well.
Excellent. All right. Let's switch gears here a little bit. Michael, as a tech leader here, we're in Q4 2025. What are some of the biggest challenges you're facing right now?
The economy is one. This is a weird thing. And when I talk to some economists, some of those economists are saying they've never ever seen what's happening right now in the economy anytime in the history of the United States.
It's
Because
definitely, I think,
yeah,
weird
it
is
is very
probably the
weird because
best word I can think of.
one side of the metrics is saying things are going really well. The other side of the metrics that things are going really bad. And in between is kind of this whole uncertainty that investors and companies just don't know, um, what's on the horizon in the next 6 months. And then you factor in new tariffs, you factor in, are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? Is the unemployment high? Is it not high enough? And there's just all these things that in the past you would generally see these financial metrics playing a role that they would start to impact the other parts of the economy. Whereas right now,
It would be
Wall
kind
Street
of
is taking
scary
off on record levels, but the economy is saying things are completely different. The Wall Street shouldn't be doing that.
if you take out the top 100 companies out there
Yeah,
and just looked at the data from there, it would probably be pretty scary. The
exactly.
monsters are doing great.
Yeah.
The too big to fail companies are outperforming, but then you get to the next layers if you were to peel that data off, and it gets a little more interesting.
It does. And so it's created all this uncertainty that I believe right now there are companies sitting on more money than they have ever sat on in their past histories of the company because they don't know what 6 months is going to look like in the economy. And so they're afraid to hire. They're
I feel
afraid
like
to take on new initiatives because they don't know how the tariffs are going to impact them. They don't know about this or that. And it's just creating this really weird
I
environment.
feel like the last 18 months in the tech space has kind of been a lot of that. Everybody kind of waiting, lots of dry powder sitting on the sidelines. What about, so you guys go into new engagements, and how do you set real expectations around AI? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because I think if we were to line 10 technology leaders in a room, we'd get 10 different definitions of AI and what it can do.
I do, and I have an opinion about that. So when I look
Please
at
share.
AI, and I think of many of my peers that are IT leaders, when you look at AI is no different than any other technology innovation, right? We know in our industry that AI is not a new concept, right? It was around during the mainframe days of the 90s. What's different about this version of AI is the front end side, right? The consumer facing side of AI, which we call generative AI or agentic AI. And so now it's putting the power of artificial intelligence into non IT individuals, right? Chat GPT, Claude, Grok, those particular types of platforms. And then with the additional innovation of utilizing AI to drive even more automation through bots and different things like that. But when you look at AI and when a company looks at AI, and this would be one argument that I have against our industry right now is that there is a lot of SaaS providers that are selling the concept of fear to companies, right? The fear of missing out. And if you don't jump on the AI bandwagon right now, you're going to miss out on this great opportunity. Well, the problem is like any other technology innovation, if you don't have a strong business reason or a business case why you're implementing AI, then you probably shouldn't implement it right now, right? You should look at what is your problem? What's your pain point? What are you trying to solve? Because many of these companies right now are spending millions upon millions of dollars implementing AI, and I guarantee you they will receive a fraction of that return on investment back. And then they're going to be
Lots
frustrated
of
and come back
recent
to IT
studies.
saying this doesn't work. But the reality is you didn't have a strong business case and business reason why you would implement it like any other technology innovation.
Lots of recent reports out there. MIT had one of them. 95% of AI projects are generating zero ROI or negative ROI. Lots of hype. And I think a lot of companies are picking the wrong projects to go after because it's pretty quick to get 90% there with AI, but that last 10% can be a killer.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And so some of the clients that we're working with, I mean, one perfect example of introducing AI is one of the clients I'm working with has an incredibly manual, arduous process when they acquire a new organization. And it takes months for them to collect the information to then feed into their system. Well, that is a perfect use case scenario for an AI bot, right? I mean, you know what the process is, and it's a repeatable process. And being able to automate that process using AI capabilities to not only build the front end of both the structured and unstructured data you're collecting from that organization, but to then put that in the format that then needs to be fed into your systems. And right now, they're spending an inordinate amount of hours of human manpower doing this, where you could completely automate that process through the use of AI. And so those are some opportunities that we're bringing to some of our clients. Just
So,
because
Michael,
AI is
here's
out
a
there
question
doesn't mean
for
you
you.
have to adopt it. Adopt it when you have a very strong business case to do that.
So when you're out there doing what you do, whether it's drumming up, securing new engagements or existing engagements you're on, and you're dealing with senior execs with very little technical background, board members, others that are saying, "Hey, their buddies' companies using AI, and they say, they've driven 60% cost efficiencies, and I want you to come here and do the same, and I want the same results."
Uh-huh.
How would you go about that conversation?
Well, I would again, I'd be happy to have that conversation with them and let them know that, each company in each industry is different, right? So let's really understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I guarantee you there might be a good fit for AI in your organization, but let's understand what your challenges are and what you're trying to address. If your number one goal is to implement AI so that you can reduce headcount, that's not sustainable, right? And you're going to be sorely disappointed by what would do to just save operational costs by reducing headcount. Because now you're losing, and I'm not saying that there might not be some savings from headcount, but right now many organizations are leading with the AI charge to say we're going to cut our headcount by 15% because AI is going to solve all these problems. Well, it may or it may not, right? It depends upon what your pain point is and what you're ultimately trying to accomplish as an organization. But at the same time, what AI can truly do is really take repetitive manual processes that humans do today and free up those humans to really focus on more strategic value added benefits to the organization. And yes, you might be able to reduce a little bit of your headcount because of that. And that makes sense, but if that's your number one goal, you're going to be sorely disappointed, and it's not going to reap the benefits you thought. And you're going to find yourself that you're going to be back having to hire people back in to your organization because you took too much of a drastic cut, thinking AI was going to solve all the problems.
So, in the software engineering world, Michael, what's your take on how AI can help software engineering teams and the type of efficiencies that are realistic?
Yeah, I think a lot of developers have been worried that AI is going to replace them because now the average person that's a non-IT professional has learned how to code, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they've learned how to
Some
use
vibe coding
applications.
stuff that, produces a good prototype, but getting from that prototype to real world that can scale, is a little different story.
No, I agree, and so what they really had done is they've used an application that is built on no code, low code, right? And now you've built this functional application that hey, look, I don't need developers anymore. That's not necessarily the case, like what you're talking about, scaling what you're trying to do when you're dealing with complex business rules. Instead, where I think AI can really benefit the development community is to expedite the speed at which development can occur, right? So you're taking some of these low level, again, arduous process historically that a developer would have to kind of go through and compiling their code to kind of going through bug fixes, testing all that, to use AI to speed up that process and to create an even more quality based product that's deployed into production. And so I think it really provides to a developer, it allows them to go from being a developer to becoming a superhero, right? And being able to use the power of AI to exponentially increase their productivity in developing good quality code. But it's not going to eliminate the developers in developing those applications. It's just
So I'm going to
only
put you on the
enhancing their
spot here.
capability.
What have you seen for engineering teams realistic productivity goals are when there's truly integrated AI tools that are driven from a infrastructure and team level? What do you think are realistic productivity gains?
Yeah, so I can tell you based upon some of the clients I've worked in and implementing AI to do that, it's been more on the QA process, right? And
Okay.
on the testing process of utilizing AI capabilities to enhance the speed at which applications are tested and then generating bug reports out of that. So historically, what would happen is a developer would hand over their code to a QA analyst, and that QA analyst would run a number of different test scripts. They would generate a bug report and they'd provide it back to the developers. Now the developers are able to use those tools to enhance their unit testing capabilities to drive the validation and the identification of a lot of issues that may have existed in their code to resolve that. So then when they hand it over to the quality person, it's almost like they've went through an enhanced unit testing segment that now is providing much better quality code that you hope the QA is still going to find bugs, but it's exponentially reduced the number of those bugs, which when you start to shrink the timeline in how sprints are being developed, right? If you're using an agile methodology, imagine how many stories that you can develop and code for in a sprint period through some of that enhanced AI automation that's providing more tools to the developer community. Again, generate more value. And so historically, what may have taken 6 to 9 months to build an application and deploy it into production may now be down to 4 or 5 months, right? So I mean, there's a reduction in there that could be significant. But it all depends upon the complexity of the application, right? And
Yep.
how you're using AI. In
A
some
lot of
cases, it may
factors
help.
play
Some
into
cases,
that.
it may not help. And so again, it goes back to having that business case and business reason why you're implementing AI in the first place.
So, as a guy, you mentioned you have over 30 years experience in this industry. What are some brutal lessons that you know now that you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
Make sure you understand the business that you're working for. This is probably the biggest weakness in the IT industry for IT leaders and IT professionals. You sometimes get caught in understanding technology for technology's sake, right? But when you're in a CIO, a CTO, or a CISO position, or even if you're a developer or an engineer, and you don't fully understand what your business does on a day-to-day basis, how are you going to position yourself to provide the highest amount of value? Because if all you're doing is saying, I'd really like to play with this technology, I'd really like to implement this technology, but there's not a strong business reason to introduce that technology, then you're not providing any value to the organization and you're only increasing the cost to that organization. Instead, really immerse yourself in what that organization does. As a technology executive, you are the CEO of that IT function, which means you need to act and think like a CEO, which means you have to understand you're not in the weeds of everything because a CEO is never in the weeds of everything, but he's built around that himself or herself a team that really kind of understands the value proposition they're providing to that organization and then making the decisions based upon your direct knowledge of what the organization is trying to accomplish and what the organization does as a business on a day-to-day basis, and take that knowledge and truly look at how technology can propel that organization forward, whether that be in growth, whether that be in profitability, whether that be in reduction of cost, whatever it may be. That was probably the biggest lesson learned, because growing up in the IT industry, it was all about understanding the technology. I think we're now making a shift specifically for the leaders in making sure you understand business operations and understand how technology aligns with those business operations.
Great advice. Michael, thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. You and sharing your journey over the past 30 years of what you've seen, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what your mission and the great work you guys are doing at Fordium Partners. Before we wrap, what's your no BS advice for tech leaders out there trying to build, scale, or even just survive in these interesting times?
Yep. Um, be have perseverance, right? It feels like at times you're hitting a brick wall. Keep moving forward, and also continue being a lifelong learner. The one thing we know in the technology industry is the one constant is change, right? Technology is constantly changing, and sometimes you feel like you're on a uh, what is it, the rat wheel, right, where you're just going in circles and stuff like that. But continue being that lifelong learner, have perseverance, and fight through those challenges, because like our history of our country, the economy has always had these peaks and valleys, and we're kind of right now, we don't know if we're in a peak or if we're in our valley. That's what's
Or, or,
confusing.
or trying to
But
figure that out.
eventually things will stabilize and get back to normal, and those individuals that persevered will benefit when the changes to the economy come, which is, I guarantee, is going to happen.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, well, we'll just send it to your competitors. Maybe the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.